drain to waste versus recirculating hydroponic systems. Fight! So let's compare these two extremely common and most basic divisions in the approach to hydroponic production. Both styles have their production bays or tanks or troughs, whatever you're growing them in. Both styles have reservoirs where the nutrient solution is pumped from to the crops. So far, similar. And here we go, the beginning of fairly significant differences. Drain to waste pumps from the reservoir to the production area and then to a drain, the drain to waste. The water goes one direction from reservoir to production, then it's gone somehow, either to a septic system, to municipal plumbing, to reuse in some kind of other fashion, but it does not re-enter this reservoir, it does not re-enter these crops. Recirculating pumps from the reservoir to the crops, back to the reservoir, back to the crops, back to the reservoir. Recirculating, it's just going in more or less a circle. We're reusing it and just pumping it around again and again. So I bet you can already begin to see what some of the differences might be. Do you want to take any guesses? Well, let's start with some of the most obvious ones first. With a drain to waste system, we have a higher water use. We're running about 10 to 15% runoff. So of all the water that goes into this system, a tenth or more is coming out of the system and disappearing. It's gone from the system. Instead, on this recirculating side, that water, this 10 to 15%, even if we have the same runoff, that 10 to 15% is being recaptured. So we have higher water use efficiency, greater water use over here. When we pump this nutrient solution to the crops, what's running off is not just pure water. So we not only have elevated water use, we have elevated nutrient use because again, this is a nutrient solution. We are pumping away, draining away both water and nutrients in this drain to waste system. As a counterpoint, this reservoir does need topping off. Sometimes some people use pure water, some people use a reduced strength nutrient solution, but one way or another, these crops are still taking up water, and so this water level does decrease over time. You can't just fill it up and let it recirculate indefinitely. You do need to replenish. A drain to waste setup, of course, also consumes water. These crops are consuming water, but you are, instead of topping off, you are constantly remixing this nutrient solution to a predetermined ratio and then filling or replacing this reservoir with that new solution. On this side, eventually, this nutrient solution can begin to kind of get out of whack. When we are refilling this nutrient solution with pure water, we're of course further diluting that nutrient solution. If we refill it with a dilute nutrient solution, it doesn't dilute this nutrient solution near as much. However, there's still an eventual imbalance which comes between the crop uptake and the nutrient addition. At one point or another, you do have to initiate some kind of partial or even complete and total reservoir changeout. So this is our first big difference, the increased water use and nutrient use versus the topping off and the slower but eventual reservoir swap. So let me take this off and we will move on to the next piece to talk about. So what might follow this single stream unidirectional use of water versus this recirculating use of water? Well, in a drain to waste system, it's far easier to manage pathogen presence, and it tends to be all else equal, a much more sanitary approach. Of course, in contrast, with a lower pathogen presence over here, we have a higher difficulty to maintain sanitation over here. The basic reason for this difference is that any pathogens introduced in the crop production area are kind of washed and carried away. Anything picked up with the water is washed and carried away into this drain over here. Whereas on this side, anything that's picked up from this production area comes right back into this reservoir, mix, and potentially even grows, propagates, population expands. Now, to further complicate this sanitation issue, it's not just maintaining a clean environment here. If there were no pathogens to pick up, then this wouldn't necessarily be a cleaner production environment. If this was wholly sanitary and there were no pathogens to contaminate the reservoir, we would still have an issue because these plants in their roots, they're not just taking up things, they're also exuding things. It's these enzymes, sugars, organic acids, phenols, amino acids, and even some other things, which are further polluting this reservoir as the recirculating nature is picking it up and kind of washing it out of the production environment, picking it up from these root exudates and pushing them back into the reservoir. So we've got plant wastes accumulating, and most any life doesn't do too well in a buildup of its own wastes. But these wastes, look, sugars, this is a common feed source for most things. So even if we just had if we had a wholly clean environment, no pathogens, we would have this waste buildup. But chances are it's not wholly clean. And so what few pathogens there might be are now building up in this reservoir, and they are feeding on all these plant wastes and further propagating in the system. So that's our second point. Greater water use leads to a lower pathogen presence as the flow continues in one direction, and we're kind of flushing them, not as a sanitation protocol in and of itself, but anything present in the production environment is picked up and flushed away to the drain, and it doesn't come back to haunt us. Anything present in this production environment comes back to then feed on whatever else is also picked up from these root exudates. So that's point 2. Let's move on to point 3. Coming back to the original premise, this drain to waste, given that we're constantly starting with this reservoir and sending it to this production environment and then draining it away, the nutrient management is much more simple. You just always mix up the recipe that you have for your crop. Whether we be talking nutrient management or pH control, and thus, of course, right back around to nutrient availability and management. Both of these are more stable in a system that always starts from a known quantity, a known concentration, and is flowing one direction towards the drain. Again, thinking back to the first point, how this system is slowly draining. Of course, both water is being consumed in both of them, but as this one drains and we're trying to continue to reuse it, we're topping it off either with plain water or with a dilute nutrient solution. Either one leads to a complex nutrient balancing. So we're constantly managing and trying to either directly measure or indirectly guess at what the nutrient content is in here. So did the plants take up more nitrogen today than they did phosphorus? Or is their phosphorus level uptake continuing to climb across time? And so we're constantly needing a new mixture, a new balance as we're mixing into this reservoir. And then of course that pH management. Pouring in pure neutral water is of course at 7 pH. That's, depending on what your solution is, but generally your solution is going to be at an acidic pH, and so adding neutral water is going to be constantly driving your pH up, which leads you to a constant pH management as you re-administer pH down to bring this back into the range that you want your water or your nutrient solution to be at. A kind of bonus to this stable water parameters and this unidirectional one-way use of water and from the reservoir to the production environment to the drain is that drain to waste actually opens up more options for your nutrients, what sources you want to use. In particular, in the new realm of organic hydroponic nutrients, you have a lot more options in the drain to waste system. Generally, this is because a lot of these nutrients, in particular the organic nutrients, the organic-based nutrients, are less stable and so can't survive or will throw your system out of balance if they're being sent in and then brought back and then sent in and then brought back, they're starting to break down and not be as they were originally intended. They're no longer the compound that you added in the first place. They've changed their chemical makeup. Over here, even if something has low stability, a low shelf life, if you will, once you add it in, it's only in here for as long as this reservoir tank is filled with that nutrient solution. It's pumped to here, it's pumped out, it's gone. Time in solution is very low. Whereas here, time in solution can be almost infinite, surely indefinite. It lasts until your next water swap out. And even if you only do a partial swap of your reservoir, then you're really getting yourself into a very complex position if you choose to use some of these more diverse nutrient source options. So if you have something unstable here, the time in solution is low, and so it very well might not decay or fall apart before whatever extra is left and drains away. Over here, you put something unstable in, you have a high time in solution. Even if it remains stable across its first course and comes back and gets dumped in again and it's still the same thing. Try and get out of the way here. Even if it gets back dumped in again and it's still the same thing, by the time it goes through again, now we have thing prime, now thing second. Eventually we hit a point where this original compound is no longer what it once was. It's now changed into something else, or broken apart really into multiple different things. And so now we're adding not our original chemical, and now we're beginning to pollute our reservoir with an undesired compound. So all right, that's points 1, 2, and 3. Clean this up, recap to finish this lecture. It's a good thing we're at the recap too, because my screen's starting to get a little dirty and I need to actually give it a real cleaning. But all right, let's go over here. Point 1 goes to the recirculating system. Greater water use efficiency and lower nutrient consumption. Both of these meaning that it generally costs less in terms of resource management, and it's just better for the environment. So long as we are pretending that this is wholly drained to waste and there's no recovery, salvage, or further use for this nutrient solution, in terms of just this hydroponic production, recirculating systems have greater water use efficiency, lower nutrient consumption, leading to less money and material inputs, and overall better for the environment, as we are not sending water and nutrient resources down the drain. Point 2 goes to the drain to waste. Drain to waste is much easier to keep clean, much easier to keep pathogens from developing, and when they do, the impact is much reduced in that it's generally flushed away and not coming back to contaminate the system, as we see over here. Point 3 goes to drain to waste. It's generally much easier to manage a drain to waste system. You have a constant supply of a set known nutrient solution with greater options, because those nutrients don't need to be stable for that long. So you can use what you want at the ratio you want and more or less set it and forget it, so that you're just pushing the nutrients through the system and then it exits. Whereas over here we have this complication in that those nutrients last in the system for a while, can degrade, devolve into something else, and to begin to affect the parameters of this nutrient solution. Point 4 is a little bit of a toss-up, but in general, because of this simpler management and reduced pathogen presence, we get better crop production in a drain to waste system. So we have plants that grow bigger, faster, healthier in drain to waste compared to recirculating. What it comes down to you, the manager, to decide is, where is your balance? Can you get from putting in less of your time and getting a bigger crop? Is that worth it to you compared to the cost, the elevated cost over here? Whereas over here, you will be saving your money on water and nutrients and spending it instead on management and having to grow more crops to get the same harvest. So this is drain to waste versus recirculating. I'm not endorsing either side, just trying to give you some of the facts to let you make an informed decision about your hydroponic production.